There is firstly the question of whether it is actually important for the Legalised Cannabis Alliance to win votes. It is important for the LCA to win votes because if the LCA were to win a substantial number of votes next time, this would put massive pressure on the next government to legalise cannabis. There is a strong possibility that the LCA could win a substantial number of votes. The main established parties are now more unpopular than they have ever been. All the parties have seen their votes drop substantially since the early 90s. Increasingly, the time when the vast majority of voters would say, I always vote Labour or I always vote Conservative, are ending. This means that new parties, such as the LCA, have a chance to win over these voters. The LCA does have a chance of getting a lot of support because it is different to the discredited established parties and because the cause it advances, the legalisation of cannabis, is a popular cause. The voters are fed up with the established parties. They are fed up with the established parties who seem to put a wish to get into power before any principle. The LCA is different. The LCA campaigns for a principle, the legalisation of cannabis, rather than on trying to get itself into power. The voters are fed up with the established parties who seem to disagree for disagreement's sake, even when their actual policies are very similar. The LCA is different. It is ready to work with individuals from other parties who seem to disagree for disagreement's sake. The LCA is ready to work with individuals from other parties who share our principles. In fact, some of the speakers this afternoon are from other parties. However, there is a question about whether a party such as the LCA, which is seen rightly or wrongly as a single-issue party, can actually win votes. The answer to that is yes. Single-issue parties can win votes and even seats. Perhaps the most remarkable result last time was in Wyre Forest, where a Dr. Richard Taylor, standing on the single issue of reopening Kidderminster Hospital's Accident Emergency Department, won the seat on one of the highest turnouts in the country, with one of the biggest majorities in the country. So, if a single-issue party advances a popular cause and can connect with the voters, they can win substantial numbers of votes and even occasionally seats. The legalisation of cannabis is a popular cause. The estimates for the number of cannabis consumers in this country vary, but they tend to put the figures in the millions at about 4 to 5 million. That is 4 to 5 million individuals who are currently criminalised and who, even after the reclassification of cannabis, could still face prosecution and even imprisonment. Each of those 4 to 5 million individuals has an interest in supporting the LCA. However, potential LCA supporters are not limited to cannabis consumers alone. There are many more voters who do not themselves consume cannabis, but who do support cannabis legalisation. It is often said that successful political movements are those which have history on their side, those to whom opinion is moving inexorably in their favour. The legalised cannabis movement seems such a movement. The Economic and Social Research Council has conducted research over the last 20 years into the public's attitudes towards drugs. The results of that research show that the tide of public opinion is flowing ever faster in favour of cannabis legalisation. When their research was first conducted in 1983, they found that only 12% of the voters supported cannabis legalisation. Since then, it has more than trebled to 41% in 2003. Now, if that research is right, that means that more than 17 million individuals with the vote support cannabis legalisation. And when you consider that Labour, with its huge majority, got less than 11 million votes last time, that shows that the votes in favour of the support for legalisation of cannabis is very substantial. This doesn't necessarily mean that all these voters are going to vote LCA. However, if even a fraction of them were to vote LCA, that would mean hundreds of thousands or millions of votes. And because the LCA is a different kind of party, because it campaigns for a principle rather than power, the LCA can win without having to form a majority of seats in the House of Commons or forming the next government, although I'm sure if we got the opportunity to form the government, we would take it. For the LCA to consider the next election a victory, it must win sufficient votes to show the next government that there is huge support for legalising cannabis in this country, and that it is in their politicians' interests to reflect that support and support cannabis legalisation. It was Mo Molan, the former Labour cabinet minister, who said recently that the reason the Labour government wasn't ready to legalise cannabis was because it thought it would lose votes. Well, therefore, it is our task to show Labour that far from losing votes, it would actually win votes if it supported cannabis legalisation. If the LCA manages to stand candidates in as many constituencies as possible next time, and give as many voters as possible the chance to vote LCA, then we can win a substantial number of votes. And if voters do vote LCA, they won't have wasted their vote. They will have cast a very valuable vote. A valuable vote because every single vote that LCA candidates get will show that there is support for legalisation of cannabis in this country. And the more votes the LCA gets, the more pressure it can put on the next government to legalise cannabis. If the LCA can manage to win a huge number of votes, the impact such a vote would have would set in motion an unstoppable momentum for cannabis legalisation in this country, a momentum which even the most deaf government couldn't ignore. So our message to those millions of voters who support individual freedom of choice, our message to those millions of voters who support cannabis legalisation, our message to those millions more voters who do not consume cannabis but who do support cannabis legalisation, our message is that your vote is one of the most powerful things you have. Take the opportunity to vote and vote legalise cannabis for life.